Hi, I'm Brianna Rose with the Mill City Times, and I have the pleasure today of speaking with Latoya Burrell, the author of Be Bold, How to Prepare Your Heart and Mind for Racial Reconciliation. Thank you so much for being here today, Latoya.
Thank you so much for having me.
Latoya, I would love to hear what inspired you to write this book in the first place.
So this book was inspired after the death of George Floyd. Living and working right here in Minneapolis, I've been calling it ground zero, and many others have been calling it ground zero also. This time felt different, although there have been other situations. We know Philando Castile, we know Ahmaud Arbery, just other situations that are newer in the media. And even with Philando Castile being in the proximity of the Twin Cities, this time just felt different for me. And I felt like there was something that I personally needed to do. And my response was this book.
Well, racial inequality is a vast and complex subject, but what can we as individuals do to try and help combat that?
That's a great question. I think that I'm happy you say, what can we as individuals do? Because this is work that is personal. It's not a one size fits all. What I can do may look different from what you can do. And it's because our experiences are different, our resources are different, our networks are different. There are so many things that makes this process one that has to be personal. So I say to people often, the first thing you can do is acknowledge that something needs to be done, right? And then the second thing for you to do is be willing to examine yourself, because we all have implicit biases. We all have stories and histories that we may not even know are causing us to be stagnant. It may be our histories and past that causes us to not do something because we may be fearful, we may be uncertain. So I think that the first thing to do is we acknowledge that something needs to be done, and then we be willing to examine ourselves first. In the book Be Bold, I say there are four things you can do. I say number one, you could examine yourself, and then you be willing to listen and learn to those around you, to history, whether it be books, podcasts, news articles, blogs. There's so many resources out there for us. And then the final step is to be bold, because you get all of this good information, but you can still be, letting fear cause you to not act, speak, react. So you have to then be willing to be bold and use your voice, your resources, your platform, your time to make a statement and make a change. And the final thing I'll say to that is, it's okay if you as one person can't change the world. It may be that you plant the seed in one other person and you may not see that tree grow, but you planted the seed. So the answer to that is we have to do something, and it starts with ourselves internally.
I agree. Examining yourself is a really good first step because a lot of times people just don't realize that they're holding on to certain stereotypes or mindsets, and being open to exploring yourself like that is a really good step. And you mentioned educating yourself and podcasts. Do you have a favorite podcast?
I have so many favorite podcasts. It's not fair for me to pick one. I follow so many podcasts on different topics. So I wouldn't even feel right just saying one. I would tell people to feel free to explore the podcasts that are out there and pick what works for you, and then you stick with it and you move forward. I'll say two things. This is not directly a podcast, but this past January 19th, it was the National Day for Racial Healing, and it's only the 5th anniversary. But the Kellogg Foundation had a website with an abundance of resources, and they said, here is how you can take a step towards racial healing. And then they break it down into where you might be. Is it personal? Is it in your community? Is it in a faith-based way? Is it with your coworkers? And so I would tell people, find resources and tools like that. And the final recommendation is, even though I say it's personal, there's personal work to be done, I also recommend doing it with a group of people who can go on this journey with you. And that will be where you will get recommendations from podcasts, specific YouTube videos to watch, additional supplemental books that you can read. So it's a journey, but it's a journey that's worth it.
Definitely. So we're at this pivotal moment in time, and it's not like we haven't been in a similar situation before, like the civil rights era. How do you see right now as being different than the civil rights era, and what similarities are you seeing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the biggest difference right now, as opposed to the civil rights era, is the technology that we have. I often wonder if Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had access to the same technology and resources that we have. I wonder what his Twitter page would look like. I wonder what his Instagram page would look like if he had the platforms that we have now. And I think that that's a difference. So if I think about the civil rights era, they had to wait until the news reporters chose to show in black and white on the news what was happening. We get to see things now in real time. So if Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was given the I Have a Dream speech today, that would be broadcast live. We would get to sit in our homes and watch it, as opposed to when it actually happened. It took time for it to be able to go viral, if you will. So I think that's the biggest difference. One of the things that I've been doing is reading a lot of books that are older books, and it's troubling a little, if you will, I'll use that word, to realize that a lot of the content in Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s books, for example, Where Do We Go From Here, or Love in Action, those are two of his books. So much of that content is still relevant and applicable today. But again, I think the difference is the technology and resources that we have at our fingertip.
Definitely. I mean, we can spread information so much wider and it's so vast. And also, if you were giving that speech today, it would go live and then people could download it, share it, pass it around. Yeah, huge difference. Thank you so much for your time today, Latoya. It was great speaking with you.
Thank you so much for your time and for having me. And for everyone listening, I encourage you to find out what is it that you can do to be bold in your actions. Every little bit counts.
And done. That was great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.